Well, thank you very much, Maggie. Welcome to the University of Texas at El Paso, Minor Islands. And we're honored to be able to share our work with you all. My name is Janet Hill, and I am an instructional technologist in academic technologies at the University of Texas at El Paso. And basically what academic technologies does is we work with instructors to help them integrate technology into teaching and learning. So we have been researching Second Life and other virtual worlds for probably about 6 or 7 years. And we own 4 islands in Second Life, and this is one of them. This one is houses the Smithsonian Latino Center, as well as the museum that we're going to talk to you about today. We also have 3 others. One we're working on for Chicano Studies that we're calling Atzlan, and it's in the works. You're welcome to visit it if you'd like, but it's a mess right now. We also have an island that's for health research. We're teaching. It's designed to teach students how to do survey work. So they go in and they'll work on. They'll survey. We have 107 bots that they can survey and take down the information and learn how to figure out the statistics, and then they can they go to, I believe it's central Mexico, and then they'll actually do the real thing. And the feedback that we've gotten is that it's a very effective way to kind of train to do survey work. And then we also have another island that houses a theater that showcases student work, student films, and there's a construction safety site that you can go and explore what it's like to be in an unsafe environment and you know, potentially get yourself killed. And then we have as well kind of an area for a professor who is working with students in organizational communications, and she brings them into Second Life and has them kind of learn how to navigate this novel environment so that they can learn a little bit more about navigating novel environments in the real world and how organizations work and don't work. So that's pretty much our islands. We also have connected to our islands just behind us. We partner with MSU because they work a lot with the Smithsonian Latino Museum as well. So we're very happy to work with them, and they have a wonderful facility just connected next door. So that's a little bit about UTEP Islands, and so I'll let Meredith talk a little bit about how she came to work with us and to create this museum with her students.
Thank you, Janet. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for inviting us, and thanks for coming to listen to a little presentation and share a little bit of what we'll be doing. My name is Meredith Abarca. I'm a professor in the English department. My area of research is literature and food studies. And I'm fairly new to Second Life. I'm fairly new to virtual worlds. But when I learned about them, I got very excited as understanding or visioning the tremendous possibilities for changing the way we teach. And most importantly for me, for changing the culture of technology with students, because I feel that many of our students, many of us, are very comfortable with consuming technology, but not necessarily using it to create, to be articulate, to be innovative, critical, just sort of use it in a tool in which we are learning and sharing information with the world. So I've been really, really excited with Second Life. I've had the opportunity to do two projects in Second Life. The first one was in relationship with the Smithsonian Latino Center for the event of Day of the Dead. I teach Mexican American folklore, and my introduction to using Second Life in teaching was to help my students create altars for this event. One of the assignments that I gave my students was to create an avatar that represented what Day of the Dead means for them. And I'm happy to say that one of my students actually won a contest the first year, and that this idea of using avatars to represent cultural values, traditions, was such that the Smithsonian Latino uses this as a workshop for them that they provide. But let's get to what we want to share today. 2 years ago, I taught a course, a graduate course on Afro-Latino voices, history, memory, and food. And for this course, I decided that the final project was not going to be your typical research 20-page paper, but a class-based project in which we were going to do, originally we thought we were going to do an exhibit, a museum exhibit in Second Life. As you will see shortly, this idea evolved. We ended up creating what has become the Afro-Latino Foodways virtual museum. But before we go any further, I think this is, if it's okay with you, Johnny, you think this is a good time to first just introduce them to the students and to hear from the students' experiences about working with Second Life. But one thing that I feel that is really, really important for everybody to know here is that none of my students in this 16-week course had ever heard of Second Life prior to taking my class. So it was a tremendous learning curve for all of us, but I think as you see our projects, we're really, really excited of the possibilities that Second Life can provide for innovating pedagogy. Janet, should we show the video?
Yes. So behind me, the center panel, I do have the video up, and you can click on that and play it there. But I will also paste the URL in local chat if you would like to click on that. And if everybody will watch that, and then let us know when you are finished.
Literature of the Americas course with Dr. Abarca, and there was a really heavy technology component with the course, and we made a virtual museum as a class and presented our individual projects together, and that was a completely new experience for me.
We explored specifically narratives that involved food and how food was connected to memory and history. With the technology, we tried to tell that story and incorporate the food also. So one of the questions that came up was how would we engage the senses as far as the food came.
Digital aspects, digital projects have been involved in the humanities for a long time. It's just recognition is starting to emerge. And so it was really refreshing when I could audit Dr. Abarca's class because she's coming to literature in a whole new way, not only in how she studies food and how she approaches narratives and groups of people, but now by incorporating the digital aspect, she is encouraging a whole new way of looking at these kinds of ways of living, ways of communicating, ways in which people interact, all of these forms of literary communication, personal communication.
Before taking Dr. Abarca's course, I had no prior exposure to anything like the Second Life program. It's very frustrating at times, but in the end, it's worth it. You feel like you've really invested time and effort and part of yourself in the project that you created?
Working with Second Life was my first experience with emerging technologies, and it was a trial and error learning experience.
Being able to incorporate a sort of digital rhetoric with this, where we're actually building a museum and transferring the story of a lesser known individual in history and making their narrative a physical space instead of just reading the text and analyzing it, we're able to relive part of it as we mapped out.
I thought that was a really neat aspect of Second Life, that it doesn't have to be a building where you walk in and there's artifacts, but recreate an actual marketplace and recreate a house.
Being producers of technology, we engage with it in a different way in which we somehow become a part of that dynamic interchange that's going on. And I think that's very valuable because it provides a new active role of engaging the material.
I became fascinated with the marketplace, and so I would have to fill the market with people. And when I finally got the hang of it, I heard my fellow classmates, I want to create this person, or I want to create a person for this booth or for this house. Could you help me? So in this case, I felt like my learning was taking me somewhere, and I could share this knowledge with my peers.
One particular individual and I were able to talk about ideas a lot. I could visualize things in a 3D manner. She could put words to it, and we could sort of collaborate to make an exhibit of some kind together, which was refreshing. That's a totally different kind of collaboration.
It was really great at the final presentation being able to present for people like the Dean of Liberal Arts and Assistant Provost, people beyond just the class.
And you want to perform to the best of your ability. And I think the fact that this was on a more global scale, you're going to release something to a lot more people than just your peers or your professors or people on campus.
The virtual museum aspect is something that I think is very valuable when teaching a graduate course, and I think the way that Dr. Abarca has utilized it is very ingenious, and I was very happy to be part of this project, and I hope that it goes well in the future.
It looks like most of us are done. Should we continue?
Yeah.
As you can see from this video, the reactions of my students, they've never used this project, but my whole idea was to provide tools in which they can translate what we read in a story into this immersive world, for them to develop other skills as critical readers, but also as visual, representing things visually. We had a lot of interesting challenges and experiences in the process. Jenna, do you want to continue talking about this video, or should we move on to some other issues?
I think we should probably talk about. I don't think we really have much more to say about the video. It explains itself, I think.
Unless somebody has a question that they want to type for us.
Yes.
or tell us.
Okay, I think.
Okay. Let me tell you a little more about the history then of how this virtual museum came about. We're going to, hopefully all of us together in a minute, walk towards the museum and show you the museum. But first I want to tell you some of this learning curve and this wonderful collaboration with Janet. When I thought about the idea of doing a museum, like I said, I originally thought about doing an exhibit. Janet had showed me a museum building in Second Life, and I thought, oh great, we can use one wall and put some pictures, and then think about what the caption would be and so forth. And then one day I walked into the island, and the building was gone. Janet just took the museum away, and I said, oh no, what are we going to do? And what she ended up with is just giving me this empty space, which was probably one of the most wonderful things she could have done for us. By just having an empty land, it opened the possibilities for my students, myself, with Janet, guidance, to visualize the literature that we were reading. Remember, this was a course on Afro-Latino voices. We began with issues of slavery, that was the factor that brought people of African origins into the Americas. And my interest was not so much, or has been, not so much to talk about how Latinos are always linked to Africa, but mostly about how food that we eat in Latin America and the Caribbean is influenced by different cultures. So that's the gist of the class. But in terms of this museum, this project, I think by virtually having an empty space, it free and intimidated, to be honest, also, students and I to figure out, okay, how are we going to create this? Jenna, you want to talk a little bit about the reactions the students share with you?
Certainly. I will say one of the things that I think if you're going to create something in a virtual world is to utilize the virtual world using its best qualities. To just, you know, anybody could place pictures on a wall in any space and, you know, come up with a museum, but we have a greater opportunity to express ourselves in a virtual world. It's much less expensive. It doesn't quite, you know, you can't create a living museum in real life as inexpensively as you can in a real world, and I mean in the virtual world. And I think it's really important to kind of take that into consideration. What kind of qualities does Second Life have that maybe we can't use in the real world, or can't use in other platforms that we can take advantage of and use? And so that's why I took away the museum, because I felt like placing images on a wall was something that limited everyone's imagination, and they really kind of stepped up to the plate and did something amazing, I think. As far as the student reactions, they at first they were very intimidated. They had never been in a virtual world before, most of them, and you know, did not think that they had the ability to do what they ended up doing. And so one of the things that we did was to kind of scaffold them in. We didn't just tell them, okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to res a prim, and tomorrow you're going to build a house. We or you know, build a village. We kind of scaffolded it. We gave them a smaller project to do, and I'll let Meredith kind of talk about that, what she did.
Yeah, one of the things that I did as an instructor is that I schedule, first of all, I scheduled a number of sessions with Janet, for instance, to teach us about Second Life. But I had a very concrete project for the middle of the semester in which we created an altar again. that gave them, and we provided the table and the cloth. All they had to do was create an item that they want to place in this altar. The goal was to have them do something concrete with Second Life, with an object, to place it so that it become a composition, like the altar, and then to step back and see what they, as a class, were able to create, the kind of story that comes through when everybody adds a little piece. So not one student was responsible for telling the entire story, but a part of a story. Collectively, all the pieces in the altar tell a very compelling story about Afro-Latino women. But I use that idea to say, look, the museum that we're creating is, you're doing one little exhibit or one part, but it's going to represent a holistic story, a bigger picture. And I think that helped because then they just focus on one part instead of being completely overwhelmed, although they were overwhelmed, about the idea of an entire museum. Part of evolution of this project is that we went from, as I've been saying, from the idea of putting pictures in a wall to essentially creating an entire, like Janet said, entire village that covers about 400 years of history. So I think just having that freedom was amazing, but we got there by developing in the course curriculum, in the syllabus, specific step-by-step projects, and one of them was the altar to begin with. When we showed the students the island, the space, when we were going to create a museum, there was absolute bewilderness in their face because all we showed them was an island with some boxes, and that's it. I'm sort of kind of tempted to just go ahead and ask you to come and walk with me to see the museum. Are we ready for that, Janet, or not yet?
I think so.
You want to lead us?
Sure. Okay, so just one thing, if you would like to see the altars and would like to visit the Day of the Dead Placita, it is on this same island, and it's to my left across the bridges. But that's not where we're going to go right now. If you will turn around, it's the village is right behind you.
And if we can stop at the bridge, if you can follow me, I'm the little doggy, as I'm sure you already noticed. I love dogs, and I decided that I wanted to be a dog. Oops, I think I just fell. If you can just stop here for a second and just take in the entire village. We're gonna walk you to it. We're gonna do a walking tour, I guess, of the village. But I just want you to take it in, and keep in mind this was nothing but an empty space, and every single item they use it here, every house they use it here, every food item and so on and so forth has a particular story that came from the course. Are you with us, Janet? I can't see you.
I'm right behind you. It looks like we have everybody.
Okay, should we walk over to where, quote unquote, the beginning of the museum?
Yes.
Museum begins.
Yeah.
Why don't you go and we'll follow you?
Okay. So they didn't create every single thing themselves. We kind of provided a base for them, and we also provided things like
Come follow us.
Like the homes that you see here. We provided them textures and homes that were already built so that they could create what they wanted to, find the textures they wanted to express what they envisioned. But we tried to make it easy for them, or as easy as possible for them to create what they wanted to. Okay, so this is the beginning, and somehow I've accidentally deleted the stairs to the pier, and I forgot to put it back. But this is kind of the planned entryway to the museum.
In terms of what Jen was just saying about her unit providing a lot of the textures and structures, what my students and I provided for the most part was the content. We were reading about the lives of people of African origin coming into the Americas, coming into the Caribbean. We were reading about how the food was changing. So we were the ones who had the content of the story that we wanted to present. Janet provided and her team a lot of the technology and the design and the structures and the textures. It would be impossible for most of us, first finding out about Second Life for the first time and be able to produce everything that you see here. But what I would like to emphasize is this wonderful collaboration that Janet in her unit, Creative Studios, Academic Technologists, and my course and the literature department program were able to create. The flag that you see here with the mask, the African mask, and the Native American faces, it's a painting by a very famous Chicano artist, Briseños. And Perin is an African word that means chili. And I like this image because it symbolizes this idea of coming together, people of African origins and people that are native of the Americas, to create a new ethnic group, which I'm calling Afro-Latinos. So I thought that this was an appropriate symbol to represent the entrance to this museum. And when you see, the first thing that you see here is all this sugar cane fields, sugar cane here, and the mill. And what this is to represent is that the reason why people of African origins were brought into the Americas was because of slavery, to work in the sugarcane plantations. So that's what this is supposed to be. One of my students was responsible for this whole exhibit, in terms of the mill, in terms of the sugar cane. But I think Janet can tell you a little bit more about this mill, which she actually created. Janet?
Okay, so one of the things that we did after we kind of did the initial Second Life workshops, we did some building workshops. We taught them how to search the marketplace and purchase things, because that is an essential skill if you want to do something to this level in what we did it in 6 weeks.
A little less, actually.
Yeah, it was a little less. So if you have your students do this, searching the marketplace is an essential skill. But of course, there were things that we could not find on the marketplace and that we had to build. And so this is one of them. And so what we did is once the students kind of came up with their concept, we sat down with them and said, okay, what can you create and what can we create? And we gave them, each one of them gave us something that my team could create. I have several students who work with me who do 3D modeling and work in Unity, work in Second Life. They're learning skills like 3D modeling and scripting and things like that. So they helped create this, but she wanted a sugar mill because this was an area where slaves or were they free? It was, anyway, it was an area where they would gather a lot of the times, and so this was kind of a symbol of community for her. So so I had to do quite a bit of research that maybe she should have done, to kind of figure out what did a mill look like in that time period. Some of the students did provide me with photos and background, and others didn't quite do that, just kind of explained what they thought they wanted. And this one I ended up doing a lot of the research. But this is what we ended up coming up with. But she did the rest of this, though, including building these bots, and she had a lot of frustration with these trying to get things to work. She was one of the students who I think struggled the most creating things, but even she managed to make a really nice exhibit.
So that's essentially the first quote unquote exhibit, is this idea of the sugarcane fields. If you follow me as I'm over here, you see some images in the sea here, in the ocean, and the river flowing along. The idea here was just simply to put something with a little bit of motion of the water to symbolize some of the food items that were brought into the Americas from Africa. So we have things like okra and rice and plantains and yams. So that's supposed to be here. But if you follow me to this other house, which I think is kind of neat, if you come with me over here.
Lisa, some of the building challenges, especially for this young lady in the sugar, she just, Second Life just was difficult for her. She had issues with her computer resing things and things disappearing and just things kind of shooting off world. That happens a lot when you're learning how to build in Second Life. So yeah, there was some frustration. It is a challenge when you're first learning.
It's a challenge, but I think when the students saw the result, I think they were very pleased with it. And like anything else, and I'm sure you know, if I didn't ask around, what kind of fields you actually, where do you guys work, if you're all teachers or not. But we all know that when we try something for the first time, there's always going to be this level of excitement, but also this level of concern and frustration. And I think in terms of my students, it's sort of kind of a range between being really, really excited and being really intimidated.
Right.
But what I tried to create as an instructor was the notion that not one single exhibit will stand by itself, meaning this was a project. We would take credit and pride in the entire museum as a unit. Mm-hmm. So we all work very hard, and like you said in the video, they work very hard helping each other, trying to figure out how to do it.
They worked a lot together, and I think like in the exhibit, one of the students mentions that one of them was much better at kind of building, while the other one was better at thinking about ideas. So they worked together and were able to create something. So if somebody didn't have, the best computer, there was another student who was there who maybe did, and so they kind of partitioned the work. So that they were both doing an equal amount of work, but maybe one was using more Second Life skills and another one was using more of their writing skills, things like that. As far as the viewer, I just they were just using the Second Life viewer.
Yeah, I'm more standing here by this gardens because I wanted to show you this combination and sort of how we visualize what we were learning in class and through the narratives, the memoirs, the novels, the histories we're reading. Here you have two gardens, if you can see where I am moving to. On one of them is supposed to represent fruits that came from Africa, and other ones fruits that are native to the Americas. We put them together to symbolize the notion that they eventually cross. But there's something really neat that I want to share with you about this tiny little subsisting garden here. And this is sort of what Janet and I were talking about, working with the students. Janet started creating this little garden here, and she put a little fence around it to protect it. And one student who was working with finding the story about the history about sweet peas realized that the subsistence gardens were actually fenced off with the vines of the sweet peas. So she had the fence taken off, and she created this fencing with the sweet peas. To talk about this history. The other thing that I wanted to point out, and I think this is a good place to do it, you've been seeing all these signs, this blue, red, yellow signs. Actually, if you click on those, and it says click here. If you take a moment and you click on those, it actually, a note card comes out, and it gives you a little bit of information about what you're looking at. And of course, the students were the ones who were responsible for filling these note cards. If anybody wants to take a moment and do that, that'd be cool. Anything else you want to add about the gardens, Janet?
No, I guess you explained about the fencing around and the black-eyed peas. That's where somebody, one of the students, really got into their research and really started thinking visually, and came up with these details that I never would have imagined. So and she's commented that if she were to write a paper and just write a paper about this, that she never would have researched at that level of detail and never would have been able to kind of visualize the project the way that she did if she had just been writing a paper. So
and there's something else that I want to say for those who are here with us who are teachers, and I'm sure you know this if you've done it before. One of the things that I noticed is by asking them to visualize it, is yes, that they end up having to do more research, but also going through the process of visualizing a story also helped with the writing, and made it much more visual and better, give it a different kind of life, I suppose, to the written narrative. If we go to the market for a minute, I'd like to say a few things about the market over here, and then I want to show you another exhibit. As you saw in the video, Josh Lopez, one of the students, he got into these little bots here. You see this bot wearing a green skirt with carrying something in her hand. Even the way some things are placed in this market, I mean, this is sort of like the entrance into the market. She's stepping into the cobblestone here from the dirt path. The idea was the student was trying to visualize the transition between how women used to sell food, going from house to house, to eventually selling it in the market. So his idea was, well, if I put her right as like she's stepping onto the cobblestones, his goal was to try to visualize that first initial process of selling food in the streets, literally going street to street, house to house, selling food, into eventually coming into the market. Each stand that you see here in the market is supposed to obviously represents a slightly different historical period. Students were responsible for different stands. I got a little crazy and I did the one with the bread. But over here we also have the vegetables. We got a lot of root vegetables, key to food in Latin America. Janet?
Okay, well, I guess one of the things I'd like to say from a practical point of view, I made the mistake of thinking that that there were certain technical details that I didn't want to bog the students down with. And one of them was prim count. And I don't know if you all know how that works in Second Life, but it's basically, that's, okay. So you know that you only have a certain amount of prims to work with on each island that you own. And there's land impact, which mesh objects will, so you can get really detailed mesh objects and bring them in, and they might be 1 or 2 land impact. But if you're going to be building with the primitives in Second Life, each prim that you res is counted 1 against your land impact, against the amount of prims that you're using. Yes. So I did not teach the students that. I thought, we have plenty of prims here. They don't need to worry about it. As you can see, they got a lot more detail than you would expect. They had a presentation that they did one evening to the dean and to professors, and that was part of their final grade. And so they were in here that afternoon piecing things together, and we ran out of prims. And I thought, how on earth is that even possible? Until I realized that they had been putting hair on all of the bots, and the hair that they were using was in the hundreds and sometimes even thousands of prims, because it was designed for avatars. And so I was going around the Smithsonian Latino Museum seeing if I could delete things and all that, and I finally figured that out. We got them to delete it and figure out other ways. You can see a lot of them are wearing hats or various things. Yeah, exactly. They can be very heavy. And people don't worry as much about that because it's not counted against land impact. That's not something I taught them, so we ended up with that problem. So, when we do this again, that I'm going to teach students about land impact and how to be mindful of that. Yeah. Another thing I want to say is Meredith pointed out that she created the bread exhibit. When she started this project, Meredith had very, very, very basic skills. By the time she was finished, she was teaching her students how to build. She was creating things on her own. She was learning with the students, and she was a fantastic role model for them. So I'm saying that just, if you have an idea and you want to try it, you don't feel like your skills are up to where they should be, try it anyway, because then it becomes a journey, a learning journey together with your students. And that's all I want to say on that.
Thank you, Janet. I want to point something out what Janet just mentioned about the students had a presentation. I decided in the middle of the semester that because we were creating a museum, and every museum, when it has a new exhibit, it has an opening night. So the final for this course was actually an opening night of the museum, and we did invite the dean of the college and some other administrative people. Students were invited and welcome to invite the parents and family. We had about 50 people who show up to this opening night, and what the students did, they essentially presented their particular exhibit. They were very nervous about that, but I think they were very proud, and they were able to see the entire museum as you're seeing it now. And I think that's when it clicked to them that they had created a really unique project as a class. Speaking of that, I would like to show you, because we're going to be running out of time, I want to show you two more things. One exhibit about a lady who lived in Barbados. We were reading a book in class, and a student read this reference to a woman whose name was Rachel. And she was just mentioned in a little paragraph. And actually, you said the student talked about her, Ellen Stapleton, she talked in the video. But I want to show you what she created. Rachel, the person, the character that she wrote in this book, she was the first black woman who bought her freedom in Barbados, and the first woman who, not bought her freedom, but the first woman who opened a business in Barbados after she got her freedom. She bought her freedom. And she had a establishment where she sold pickles. But it was not just pickles that she was selling. She was selling a few other things in her business. Anyway, my student created this house, and the image that you see here in the front, this lady, well-endowed lady, is supposed to be representing Rachel, and you see why she wanted to create a bud that was big, like you see this lady here. My student managed to find a picture, an image of Rachel, of this character. And if you come with me to this house, to this business, that used to be called the Royal Naval Hotel, as you see here, but see what the student was able to do visually here. Sorry, I'm dumping into the door. We can actually walk into this building, to this house, and here you have a little table for the restaurant where you sell pickles, and here you have all these pickles, all sorts of pickles, and there's the image of what Rachel used to look like. But then, of course, remember, it was not just pickles that she was selling. She actually had well, if you look at behind the curtain and you see the curtain there and the bed, I think you know what other business that was, right? That's right. It was a brothel. She probably got more money from that than selling pickles. But what I appreciate about that is the creativity that the student had in terms of figuring out how within this house that she managed to buy in the marketplace, how she used the curtain, how she divided, how she communicated the complexity of what Rachel's business was. And once again, here too, if you click on all those icons, the red, blue icons, you will get more of the story of who Rachel was. So this is, think about it, this is something that a student who never heard Second Life on August, by the end of November, she created this. Now, if we go to another exhibit that I want to show you, and then I want to take you to what we call the community center. We need to just get out of this house. I need to figure out how to get out of this house. You can follow me out here. Jenna, do we want to show the pit or do we want to show Rayita's house?
Let's can show. Well, if Rayita's house, I think is pretty interesting.
Right here you have a pink house. It's called a paladar. Paladar is a sort of a food establishment in Cuba, where people sell food in their private homes, but they sell it for, as a public, to the public. We read a story about this woman called Rayita, and she had a paladar, and one of my students put this exhibit together. Here you have Rayita. If you were to walk into this house, you'll see a click for a video. If you click on it, you would see images of Cuba, but most importantly, you get to hear Rayita's voice. And this is also another student who had a lot of problems building in Second Life. I met with her on weekends to help her build, to put it together, but I think she did a really nice job in the end. The shrines that you see in the front of the house, in her memoir that we read in class, it talked about why Rayita had those shrines in front of her yard, so we created them too. And like I said, if you go inside the house, you will see that video where you can click on and hear Rayita's voice, which I think it just adds that other dimension. I mean, it went from being a character in a story that we read to actually being able to hear her and see her and enter her house. Okay? I would like to take you, I hope I'm not rushing too much here, but I would like to take you to the community center. Is that where we want to go, Janet? Oh, Janet, do you want to say something about the pit?
This is, I believe it's a Barbacoa Pit, right?
Yeah, Barbacoa.
Yes. So one of the students actually had a family recipe and had kind of a connection with barbacoa, which is meat that's yeah. Go ahead and explain it.
Yeah, it's pit cooking. Her job was to figure out how to help Janet and work together to create this pit, which I'm really impressed that Janet and the student were able to do together. The student provided the research and information about it. And then one day I come into Second Life and here Janet has created this amazing pit. And if you look at it, you can see that the volcanic rocks on the bottom that is what was used to cook. And the whole idea was that it's next to the store where people are actually selling it, if you can see it in the market, that men would cook the meat in the pit and women were the ones who would sell it in the market, in the stalls. So that's what the student was represented here. And the the place to buy the meat is the stall that you see there with the stripes.
Right.
So
And you can see that yeah, she has the characters bringing the meat from the pit into the stall to sell. The idea that Meredith was trying to convey here is that kind of this outer section kind of shows them growing the food, and the food kind of in its natural form, and then they're now bringing those foods together into dishes that they're then selling and then bringing into their homes, and that's kind of the what's trying to be conveyed here with the placement of things.
And then the whole idea was that each exhibit, each section that you see represents a different historical period, a different place in Latin America, in the Caribbean. But then I wanted to end with the idea of having a community center. And this is the community center. Come with me to this community center. This community center sort of brings it together. Early on in one of the exhibits, we have the history of rice. I mean, you saw, we kind of walked by very quickly, but you saw the cultivation of rice. So students got really interested in rice, how it was brought from Africa to the Americas, how it was cultivated, what kinds of dishes were created. So her exhibit, so to speak, is in different places in the museum because it's telling different stories. And here you can see the final part of her story. With the images of the rice. The pictures on this front wall, as you walk into the community center, there are dishes. And once again, if you click on some of these images, icons, you would give the recipes for those dishes. Early on, I mentioned a student who got very interested in sweet peas. Here, you see how she brings together the final part of her story. If you click on the bowl of peas, you would get a little bit. You take to get some home. Once again, we have a video up here that if you click on it, it lasts about 6 minutes, so you can do that later if you want to. It's a video that explains who are Afro-Latinos, since we'll be talking about Afro-Latinos. Who is this group, and why is it important to talk about them? From my perspective, it's important because it's a group that we don't often talk about them as a group, as an ethnic group in Latin America. So it's more about more than the food. It's a recognition. In Mexico, we call it the third raíz, la tercera raíz, the third root, which is the African root. We as a Mexican, so we as Mexican talk a lot about being mestizos, which means European and indigenous people. But the number of people from African origins living in Mexico during the colonial period was pretty substantial. The argument is that many Mexicans have African genes, roots in them. So part of this whole project is to bring awareness to this other ethnic composition of Latinos in Latin America and the Caribbean. Janet? Anything else that we need to add?
I don't think so. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
We do have a book here, if you can see it. I'm going to walk towards it. I would love it if you can give us your comments also, either right now, so we can answer questions. But if you can sign the guest book, that would be cool, because the students do get to see it. But seriously, I would like to. Can we entertain any questions? Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're trying to bring forth the culture and the history and the people together here.
Why Second Life? One of the main reasons is the marketplace. Oh wow, that's awesome. One of the reasons is the marketplace. Another reason why Second Life, because we wanted to be able to reach out to a global community, and Second Life has a much larger user base. And then another reason is that we already own these islands, and a lot of the building that was done on these islands when we started researching OpenSim was and it was done with other creators things. So to move it into OpenSim was going to require a lot of manpower. These were for other islands, and so we decided to stay here. And we even stayed through, the when Linden Lab changed their policies as far as nonprofit and educational sims. We were able to stay. We actually were able to support that through the technology fees that we receive, and so that's one of the main reasons, is the being able to reach a global community, and also just the practicality, being able to build this in open sim and rebuild some of the things that we had already created was just going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I don't even know what OpenSim is, so she will have to first educate me on that.
It's we're working at bringing some things into Unity, and we're doing that basically because they're easier to incorporate into Blackboard and things like that. But our primary focus has been in Second Life, and it's worked really well for us, especially with the Day of the Dead festival that we do every year. We reach within a 3-day period something like 17,000 residents, and we're able to bring them the Hispanic culture and the wonderful Day of the Dead celebration, and we've been very pleased with how that has worked out here in Second Life.
Well, I'm going to have to learn about OpenSim's technology and see what else I can do with that.
It's very, very similar to Second Life, Meredith.
Yeah. For me, having this already set up with academic technologies made it very possible, because I had a unit of support. I don't know as much, compared to Janet, I know absolutely nothing about technology, really. And to many of you, I'm sure. But as an academic, this was a really good way to begin to venture out and experiment and be creative about how I think about my pedagogy. And like I said, this is a project. This entire village turned out to be a project created in 16 weeks. 16 weeks meaning does that semester. So we were reading all this literature, and then truly the last 4 weeks of the semester, we were working like crazy. It was not uncommon for me to find my students at 2 o'clock in the morning in Second Life, doing our projects, creating. I do have a little question for you guys. It's sort of off the subject a little bit, but I'm curious. Where are you visiting us from? We're in El Paso in Texas, but I know some of you might be in California because of the time that we're meeting, but North Carolina, great. Venezuela, Argentina, New Orleans, Midwest, Dominica. See, this is precisely why I think the power of Second Life, and I will learn about OpenSims, is this notion of being able to share our stories, our knowledge with a global community. That's what the 21st century is. So I'm really excited. Italy, Toronto, Portugal. Wow, I'm impressed. Thank you for answering that question. I appreciate it. Are there anything else that we can address before we take off? I believe about the project, about teaching with the new project. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm already, as a matter of fact, well, even this museum, I'm already thinking what the second fine tuning is going to be that we're going to do here. And I'm going to be having my next class, the focus of the class is going to be food and memory. So I'm going to see how some of that aspect of that course enters into this museum. But yeah, I'm already thinking of other projects. And I've been watching the videos and the presentations that have been happening in the last month here and gathering more ideas.
As far as events, one of the things that we're trying to work on is because the Day of the Dead event is so well received, we're trying to bring it into this particular village by talking a little bit about the foods and the Afro-Latino influence on Day of the Dead. So that's one of the things we're trying to do. And Meredith every year does an altar for the Day of the Dead event. And you can see, I think we've got 2 of them up now. So she's continuing that.
Yeah, in terms of computers,
That's a good suggestion. Thank you, Kim.
yeah. And the other good thing about working with the university is that we do have very good labs all around the university. Students have open access to them. We also have the opportunity, or they have the opportunity to borrow computers. So there's a number of ways in which we can help them with the technology here at the university.
I haven't tried to teach them how to use another viewer because I'm a little bit concerned about the installing it. Things like installing that viewer is not quite as simple as installing a Second Life viewer. But that is a really good suggestion. I use Firestorm. I prefer it for building myself. Yes.
Wow.
I agree. Pignon? I don't know how to say your name, but I agree.
Are we talking about Firestorm?
I like Firestorm the best, but I do think that for the students, it's much easier for them not to have to worry about that one extra bit of technology installing or having to do updates because updates in Firestorm is not exactly the easiest thing to do. Pio. Oh, yeah, that will get you in trouble because they're discontinuing some of the older versions of Firestorm. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for coming.
And please, if any of you wish to use any of our islands, you're welcome. We
my goal is
visitors.
For those of you who are interested in the Afro-Latino histories a little bit, my goal is that you can come here, bring your students if you're teachers or whomever, and just walk them around and explore and look at all these clips. Eventually, there are going to be more clips for videos. So I want this to be a learning space for others. So thank you so much for having us.